You get a thought. It stays on a loop. You get an intrusive thought. You start freaking out because you're like, oh my God, am I a psychopath? And it goes on and on. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The O part of OCD, and that is pure O. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and here we are close to the end of February, which I'm actually okay with, if I'm being honest, because my birthday is closer, and we're almost here in spring. But it's so funny. Somebody had pointed out the trauma bond podcast at the end. It was kind of faded out and faded back in, but I fixed it probably 12 hours after it was up. But I appreciate that for pointing it out. And I am human and I do all of my things. I do the podcast. I make sure if there's any research done, I do that. I do the edits. I mix and master it down. I also do the Patreon. I also do the worksheet. I record my socials. I have my clients. And so some things are going to go through the cracks because I am a one-stop shop. It would be a hell of a lot easier to delegate some of these things out, and it would help me finish my book sooner. But that comes with having to pay someone, and I am not at the place currently where I can do that. However, my Patreon does help offset some of the expenses because to do the podcast, it has to live somewhere. But my whole point was I appreciate you guys for pointing to that to my attention, but I fixed it right away. And that also goes into what I'm talking about today, and that is the O part of OCD, obsessive. And that actually has a psychological name, and that's pure O. So we're going to talk about that, but I definitely want to point out that over on the Patreon, there is a really good worksheet to help you determine kind of, hey, could I have pure O? What is going on with me? And I think it's very helpful. And it can also be helpful if you're going to go to your doctor for a diagnosis. So when you do the worksheet, it will give you kind of a point of reference. So don't self-diagnose yourself. You want to allow yourself to kind of use it as a guide. And then you can take it to your doctor or anybody else that you feel that you need. And you can find that at patreon.com/the positivity experience, or you can click that anywhere that you're getting the show right now. There's also a link that will take you to the website for the workbook. It's free, and that's on Letting Go. So if that's your jam, that's what it's going to be. So I want to talk to you about the pure O, because everything I just said to you that I do all myself is so helpful for my pure O. Listen, everything comes with a caveat. There's going to be good. There's going to be not so good. I also have severe intrusive thoughts. I've now learned to walk with them, and we make kind of fun of them here in the house. And it's good to know you're not a complete psychopath. So you get used to it and you understand what it is. However, the other side of that is my focus, because I have ADHD, OCD, and then I have pure O. Anything with letters, you can just give me the alphabet. But it really helps because if I find something and I'm going into it, it's going to be a lot easier for me to really focus on it. This has actually been great in my coaching therapy side of this. And you guys know I do take clients all over. Yet again, somebody asked again how you could become a client. You'd just go right to my website. It's anywhere in the world. The show notes also has it. And people ask, so I'm just throwing that in there. So I want to talk to you about it because we've talked a lot about intrusive thoughts. I have an entire podcast on intrusive thoughts alone, but I wanted to go into this because it's something that I've had and it's something a lot of my clients have. And they're like, oh, could you do a podcast on it? I absolutely can. And here we are. So think of obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. So obsessive speaks for itself, obsess, obsess, obsess. Compulsion means, okay, I have to tap this table 3 times before I walk out the door or something bad is going to happen. You are compulsed. There's a compulsion. You must do this because if you don't, something bad could happen or you just get completely out of sorts. This is where you would see rituals, hand washing, counting, which so I kind of have a little bit of all of it because I've always been a counter. I can tell you how many steps are in my house. I can tell you how many steps it gets to something. It's nowhere near like it used to be, but any rituals like that will and there's also one called body checking, which I've done pretty frequently too. And that's where you're constantly checking your body. So for me, I have a little mom pouch and I will constantly touch it. Like I'm like, okay, here it is. Here's my belly. And I can do that multiple times throughout the day. And that's body checking. And that's part of the CD of OCD. So let's talk a little bit more about what is Puro. Okay. It's the subtype of OCD, and it's characterized by intrusive, distressing thoughts with, kind of like oblivious compulsions at times. And again, we'll go into my intrusive thoughts, and it's so important to understand that you are not a psychopath or a crazy person because you have these thoughts. The issue is people attach thoughts and truth to the same thing, and they're not the same thing. You have to remember, thoughts are just going to pop in your head. They could be from anywhere. Your first thought is never your responsibility. It just pops in. But what we do is we glom onto it and think, oh my God, why would I think that? And then you go, okay, go away. I don't want this thought anymore. I want to go away. What you resist persists, and what you run from will chase you. So the more you focus on trying to get out of that, the more you're going to stay in it. And we'll go into it a little bit more on how you can reframe that a little bit. But it's so, so important to understand it, because if you go, why am I constantly here? Now, intrusive thoughts are not abnormal. And I would dare to say, I'm not in everybody's brain, but I would say at least 95% of the people have some level of intrusive thoughts. When you have anxieties, when you have other neurodivergent things, and any kind of brain chemistry or rewiring that's maybe not so amazingly positive for your neural pathways, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to glom onto this. And so I just want you to realize, don't panic and think, oh my God, I'm having these thoughts all the time, because that will sideline you. And it's very, very important to talk to your doctor ASAP if you find that it's debilitating in your life. Listen, being a human being is tough. All right. Living in the world we live today is tough. It's kind of like a little bit of Hunger Games. So it's pretty easy to have negative thoughts or intrusive thoughts because of your surroundings. So that's not abnormal. Obviously, if it's more, you would definitely want to talk to your doctor. But if you find yourself sidelined and you're having a hard time doing anything and you're staying in the bed and it's part of your depression, definitely talk to your doctor about an OCD screening. And, talk to them. And like I said, if you're doing the workbook, you can say, okay, here's what I found. And I think I might have this. Tell me what you think. And they'll give you a full test. And then it helps identify it. So traditional OCD, here's the difference. Traditional OCD, it involves external rituals, hand washing, counting, body checking, and then common intrusive thoughts revolving around themes of harm, mortality, sexuality, religion, and existential fears. That's the difference. Okay, that's the difference. Now, you can have both, by the way. That's where you're like, if I don't wash my hands or if I don't tap on this light switch 4 times, something intrusive, like something bad is going to happen. So now you start catastrophizing it. So that's where the obsessive and the compulsion, the rituals, external rituals will come into play. And, even though they're external, counting or body checking, that's all within yourself. But just understanding what the difference is, because a lot of times you think, well, I'm not compulsive. I don't think I have OCD. Well, you might not, but you might have pure O. It's fairly not a recent discovery. I think it's just people are more inclined to test for that now and to really look into it a little bit deeper. And, listen, every day, damn near every day, sometimes twice a day, we learn more and more about the brain. We learn more and more about the neuropathways. We learn more and more about neuroscience. We learn so much because, listen, I don't care the smartest, quote unquote, smartest person on the planet about the brain and the smartest person on the planet, quote unquote, about mental health still only knows a thimble of how our brains work. The gray matter in the brain. Why do we have the gray matter? What is happening? Why do I have these things? And this is why you may find you're like, well, damn it. I keep getting on this medicine. That's not working. Then this medicine comes out. Then, this mindful practice, but then no, that's not as effective. Do this. Well, guess what? You're going to find that in everything in this world. And that is because we will constantly be learning. So don't go down the rabbit hole of like, well, hell, nothing that I do is right. I was born in the 70s, 71 to be exact. And prior to that, people never thought smoking during your pregnancy was bad. Matter of fact, it was almost encouraged, like, oh my gosh, do this, it's great. Well, obviously we know now that's not the facts, because you had to learn it. So I just want you to be okay with understanding you're always going to be a little bit more frustrated, because you're like, well, shit, this is what I'm being treated for, but now it might be pure. Yes, because we're trying to figure it out. I understand it's frustrating. I've lived the frustration. I know the frustration, and I learn more and more every day, and I provide that to my clients. And 6 months ago, it was effective, but now I'm going to make it more effective. So I'm sharing that with you because this process of mental health, this process of healing, this process of relationships, this all can be frustrating because there's no one way. Going back to the whole concept of perfectionism, because that's fake, right? There's no standard for perfectionism. And everything that we do in our life becomes an experience-based thing too. Okay, science is one thing, but also your experience. So the more that you have these thoughts and the more that you understand them, the less you're going to be a victim to them. Because trust me, you can become a victim of it. I'm going to tell you some of my common ones here in a little bit. You're going to be like, ooh, okay. Don't go around her when she has a hammer. But we will talk about it because some can be self-inflicted, right? Some can be harming to self, and some can be homicidal towards others, which is traditionally where mine go. But again, we'll talk about it, and you will get judged for it at times if you're not with a doctor. But if you go, oh yeah, I had that thought, people might go, what the hell? That's not normal. It is a thought. Now let's talk about the science behind that, okay? So the brain default mode, okay? That's DMN, yes. That's the brain default mode. It's highly active in people with OCD, and that causes excessive self-referential thoughts. So you have to understand this is part of your brain. This is what's happening. So you're not just, this isn't just happening. It's part of how your brain is. It's part of different things. Again, not to be mistaken as like, well, this has just got to be what it's got to be, because there's other things, medication and practices that can help you with accepting this. And one of the things is exposure response prevention, which I use so much in my practice. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. Anyway. Now, overactive amygdala, that's your little amygdala. That's what we call your critter brain, reptilian brain, survival brain, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And it's a dysregulated serotonin level, and that contributes to a heightened fear response. This is why we do have medication to help balance some of that, because some of this you can definitely work through with mindfulness, but depending on the severity of it and where you are, you may need medication, and I don't know, you might need medication for the rest of your natural born life. You have to decide, right? Because I know a lot of people get anxiety about medication. You do what you want. This isn't me pushing medication. Trust me, I don't get paid for any kind of big pharma. I'm telling you what is effective. You have to say, and I did this. Oh, I can figure it out. I don't want to take medication. That made it worse for me. That really did, because I kept trying to do it myself, and then that wouldn't work. And then I was frustrated. Then I was mad at myself. Then I felt shitty about myself because I couldn't figure it out. And I felt, well, taking meds would make me weak. Oh, hell no. I happily embrace that. And when that comes to medication, you have to say, what is the benefit versus the risks, right? What is it, right? Anything you take or do is always going to have a negative, could potentially have a negative or a positive. Even the things that you do abundantly, you can, if you have too much of it, it can be negative. That's just the balance of life. So sometimes understanding like the dysregulated serotonin and treating that piece of it and rewiring how you think, those two things can go close to close, hand in hand together. But you have to ask yourself, well, don't ask yourself. Your doctor might say, hey, this is what we recommend. You can kind of do whatever you want. And I think that's the important factor here is whether you listen to me or you go to the doctors and you're like, okay, I don't know if I want to do that. Well, then don't. But we're giving you things that are scientifically backed to be proven to kind of help you through these levels. So you got to decide where you want to kind of land on that. And studies show that everybody experiences, as I mentioned before, intrusive thoughts, but those with OCD give them meaning and resist them, reinforcing stress. So let's talk about that. Everybody, I don't know if you've had this. I certainly have. You're driving down the road. Da, 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 zoom, zoom, zoom. You're driving. And then all of a sudden you might think, man, what if I just said zoop? What if I just ran into oncoming traffic? Holy hell. Or you're going over a bridge and you're like, ooh, what if I went wee? That doesn't mean that you get stuck there. You see it, you go, oh, that's kind of weird. Oh, that's uncomfortable. And then you just keep it moving, right? You're not attaching this sense of like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. Even though it could feel really hard of like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Now, as I told you, I will tell you a few of mine. No, I'm not crazy. Yes, I've had intrusive thoughts. Yes, every single time I have picked up a hammer, I have these massively intrusive thoughts. That's why I listen to a lot of true crime. My husband and my friend and I had a true crime podcast a while back in the day. So, you do a lot of stuff. Plus I like to psychoanalyze, killers and serial killers. Like when I listen, I also listen from a mental health perspective as well. And every time somebody would be like, and they did this with a hammer, I'm like, I get it. I understand it. Because in my brain, I'm always like, oh, what if I just went, everywhere I went? And I'm not going to do that. But it's comical now in the house, right? It's comical because if I'm hanging a picture, not so much anymore because I don't really have that as much. Every now and again, it kind of ventures in because I don't fight it. I know what it is. But it would be funny because the family would be like, oh God, she's hanging a picture. Everybody take shelter. And we laugh because we know what it is. I know what it is. Now, yours might be self. Yours might be more about self, things that you might do. Like I said, driving into oncoming traffic, or sometimes even from a sexual perspective, like, oh my God, would I actually harm somebody? Could I do that? And I understand because again, you're in a space of going, that's not who I am. Am I? Now you start second guessing yourself. Oh my God, am I? Am I? Is that me? Because you're trying to make it make sense and you are attaching an emotion and you're giving it validation. And that is not what you're going to do. And again, studies show this. Everybody experiences intrusive thoughts. But if you have Puro or OCD, you're giving them meaning. This means I'm crazy. This means I'm bad. This means I'm blank. Whatever it is that you are attaching that to, and then that's exacerbating that fear response. So anytime you have a fear response, now it goes the chicken and the egg, right? Thought comes in your head, bam. And now you take that and you go, oh my God, this is crazy. Now you start trying to figure it out. Am I this way? Now you start psychoanalyzing yourself. Is it this? Oh my gosh, am I going to do this? Go away, go away, go away. You will not work through that expeditiously because you're trying to control it. You're judging it. And you're like totally saying bad things about yourself. You do not want to do that. Now, there's a thought action fusion trap. TAF. Thought action fusing. So it's understanding that thought action fusion, it's an irrational belief that thinking something is as bad as doing it, right? So let's put those things together. If I think of whatever your intrusive thought is, right? If I think of if I think about bludgeoning somebody, whatever the case may be, you're thinking to yourself, hey, if I'm thinking this is just as bad as doing it. And it is not. You have to remember how the brain is. Listen, you're not going to be smarter than what's going on in your brain, right? No matter how you psychoanalyze it, as mentioned before, top brain doctors will constantly be learning, will constantly be doing that. Always. So you have to remember you are most certainly not smarter than what is going on in your brain. The issue you have is you're trying to stop it. You're trying to understand it. And you immediately think, oh my God, I am such a bad person. Why am I thinking about this? You're now assigning this identity with it, and you're assigning this value, and you're assigning not being quote unquote crazy. You're doing this. And then you go, oh my God, why would I think that? So now you are assigning that to be just as bad is actually taking the action. I mean, that's just what you're telling your brain. And it's just an irrational belief because thinking something is not as bad as doing it. And just because you're thinking doesn't mean you're going to do it. Here's an example. Someone with Puro may think, if I have a violent thought, that means I'm going to do it and I'm going to act on it. No, it's just a thought. Okay, so if you've ever had an intrusive thought, I don't care if it's towards self or towards other people, and you keep saying to yourself, oh my God, this means I will act on it. And let me tell you, you will have this sense, a little bit of a sense that goes, well, I could do that. You almost have this little bit of like, maybe I will. It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. But it is not as bad as doing it. But the problem is you immediately think, if I'm having this thought, I'm a bad person and I could do these things even though I'm not acting on them. And that's not a true statement. We have thoughts every day. I believe we have like 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. So you just don't realize it. That's why when you go to sleep at night or attempt to go to sleep at night, you think you're sleeping. Well, you are sleeping. You go into an unconscious state. And then all these little guys jump in your brain on this little teeny tiny conveyor belt like you would see on I Love Lucy. And they're all standing there. And they go, hey, was this important to keep? Nope, let's get rid of it. Oh, is this important to keep? Maybe. Let's put this over here in this part of your brain, right? If you remembered every single thought and every experience that you had, I believe you would totally go insane. I mean, you would have to. Because you could hear a dog barking, you could blink your eyes, you could hear a sound. All these things are thoughts, believe it or not. They're everything that you're experiencing. So what happens is when you go to sleep and you're in an obsessive loop, you're going to sleep and you may dream about it, you may stay up about it, you may labor over this all the time. But when you're resisting it, these guys on the conveyor belt don't really have an opportunity to kind of go, okay, is this true? No. All right. Just a thought. It's okay if you remember it. We're just going to get rid of it. The problem is you're trying to make it make sense. So you're essentially telling the guys, I got this, but you don't got this. So often when you're going to sleep or you're trying to go to sleep and you start obsessing on it, that's where it becomes a problem. That's where the issue comes because you're trying to make it make sense and you're trying to feel better about yourself. It's perfectly fine. Now, studies show people with OCD have a heightened responsibility bias. Okay. So this makes you feel personally responsible for preventing this. Okay. So let's go into that again. It's a heightened responsibility bias, and it's making you feel personally responsible to work through this and change it. I mean, sure, you can, it's your brain, but it's just a damn thought. You don't have to fix something. And when you understand that it's the obsessive piece of it, it makes it a little bit easier for you. That's why I'm doing this episode. Because when you understand, listen, it's not going to be comfortable. I'm not going to tell you this and you're going to be like, no big deal. I can just go with a hammer. Like, no. But you're going to see it. You're going to be aware of it. You're going to let it go. You're going to see it like you would erasing a dry erase marker board, or, throwing it in the trash can, or watching it go by in a cloud. You will be able to do that as you get comfortable in knowing what your brain is going through. So when you can understand the science behind it, it makes it less personal. Yes, it sucks. I know. We all think nobody could feel the same way as I do in our anxiety. No one could be as down as I am in my depression. No one could be as crazy as I am with my intrusive thoughts. And the reality is that's not true. Everybody feels it's the worst. Everybody goes, well, I know other people go through this, but I don't know. Mine's really sidelining. There is a reason why there is a name for it. There is a reason why it is a treatment plan. You are not too much. You're not too much. You're not broken. You just got a little wiring things going on. And when you can learn to cope with it and have exposure therapy and possibly medication, this helps. But understanding what it is helps you at least take some of that I'm crazy away. Because there's a role of avoidance and reassurance seeking. Reassurance seeking is a problem for so many things in your life. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? Am I a good person? Am I a good person? You're looking for a constant place of reassurance. Then you have the mental rituals that are subtle, constantly analyzing your thoughts, avoiding triggers, or seeking reassurance. And I got to dismantle this for a minute. In this piece, this is a good foundation to what I do. Avoiding triggers is not it. Okay. I will tell you this as I tell everybody who comes to me. I will trigger you, and that is my plan. And you're like, oh, why would you do that? Because it's your inner child and it's other things that are going on inside of you that you keep avoiding. So you can't address it And you can't process through it if you're constantly in avoidance to it. This is the exposure piece of it. I will continuously expose you to things that make you uncomfortable, continuously. And after a while, not only do you desensitize to it, not in a negative way, because you're not avoiding it, you detach the emotions to the actions. That's how exposure works. And it's amazing. So if you're walking around avoiding your triggers, you're only going to grow so far because you're not really protecting yourself. You're imprisoning yourself, especially when it comes to intrusive thoughts or any kind of thought analyzation, because you're like, oh, I better not think that. I better not go there. You're putting yourself in a prison that you don't need to be in. It's a mental lock that you've now said, I can't go here or I can't do this because I'm going to avoid it. Remember, just because you're not dealing with something doesn't mean it goes away. You're not dealing with it, which means you're avoiding it. If you're avoiding it, there you sit. I always use the the cat litter in the box. You have a cat, okay? And cat goes to the bathroom and the cat covers it up, cover. Well, it doesn't just disappear. You have to go in and you have to scoop the cat litter, right? Just because you can't see it or it's not visual and you try to avoid it doesn't mean the damn thing isn't there. So if you're constantly analyzing it, what's wrong? Oh, I don't want to do this. Or I'm going to seek reassurance. Hey, am I crazy? Hey, am I okay? Am I good? And then you're going to research it to death. This is the other part of the obsessive thinking. You're going to research things. Stay off Google. Please stay off Google. You stop going on social media looking for answers because you're not going to find what you're looking for. And you'll go straight to the negative. You'll hear, hey, this is a good treatment plan. Oh God, no, I don't want medication. No. I heard if you take this medication, your head turns green and your head pops off your body. Whatever the case may be, this goes into a confirmation bias. And this is where you're trying to confirm that you are right and your fears are right about something. This is that loop again. Okay, here's some key science for you. This is where the science brain's going to come into play. Okay, so Puro has an increased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex. This is your ACC, and that's the region responsible for error detection, and that causes heightened doubt. So again, telling you about, the brain scans. So your brain scans have scientifically shown that Puro has an increased activity. So if you ever had a brain scan or you've ever seen one, it's going to light up in certain areas, right? It'll be different colors depending on what region is being active in that moment. So as they do more studies on Puro, and let's say they're analyzing the brain, they can see where something is overactive or underactive or when it's active. Because it's not like your brain stays static. This is, they've done studies and brain scans on when you're practicing mindfulness, meditation, and you're allowing things to come. You can see the cool colors and the calming in the brain. This is the beautiful part of mindfulness. This is the beautiful part of awareness and exposing yourself to things. Because if not, and you're avoiding things, your brain is like, oh my God, we have to process this immediately. What the hell is happening? And it's overwhelmed. So when you're operating in your ACC, this is the region, this is error detection. So if you're like, oh my God, something's wrong. Well, it doesn't even make sense. And that's where exposure response prevention comes in. This is my favorite thing to practice. This saved me literally, I think, from being institutionalized for a long period of time. I really do, because I constantly, and I wouldn't recommend you do this on your own. I do this with my clients, but I've had this done to me, is I went back to anything distressing and I relived it and I relived it and I relived it, but not the way you're thinking, not going back as a victim, going back and seeing it and then seeing myself as the adult me being there to understand that I am safe now. So it took away this trauma response to molestation. It took away this trauma response to survival, right? Because you look at it and you live in it versus look and going, okay, this was a moment in time. I'm here now. And then allowing yourself to witness the fact that you no longer have to be imprisoned to this thought. You don't have to be imprisoned to the mindset of it. So exposure is obviously, and sometimes it's gentle. Sometimes you got to gently, but it rewires the brain and it gradually reduces reactions to these intrusive thoughts. right? So for me, because the hammer's mine, I would just hold the hammer and I'd look at it and I'd like tap, tap, tap a nail or something. I just look at it. I'm like, you know what? It's just the damn hammer. Or driving down the road, I'm like, okay, I could run into this car on the other side of the road, but I'm not, because it's just a thought. And that you can't not drive because you're afraid of doing that. You can't not hang a picture because you're afraid of bludgeoning somebody. Like, that's not a thing. So as you expose yourself to it, think about something that you fear doing that you do easily now. I don't know. Maybe it is driving. Maybe it is something else. But think of something right now in your life that you do that you once feared, but you exposed yourself to it over and over and over again until it became a part of your daily routine. You got over that fear, right? You can't get over fear. You got to get through the fear and turn you're over the fear. And it's really important. Now, how do you break the cycle? Because breaking the cycle here is the key to get you off of that loop. I look at it as a carousel. Okay, you're around, the carousel. You're on the horses or whatever you're on. And sometimes it has a mirror in the middle, at least in my brain. The one I'm sitting on has the mirror. Okay, so as you're going around in a circle, the mirror is all the way there, but there's kind of broken up in different pieces. I like to see it as that piece of it. It's just a static piece that's there. I'm going around it, but eventually that carousel is going to stop and I can get off that carousel. But when I get back on, there it is again. But it doesn't hold an emotional response to me. I have great practices and I teach people an anchor place. And an anchor place is a place, I think that's what I'm going to do for the bonus episode this month. The higher tier in the Patreon gets one bonus episode. And I think I may either do green, red flags in relationships, and then another one just do that, kind of like this anchor place. But my anchor place allows me the safety to sit with my thought, put it in something and let it go away. Maybe it's a leaf going down a river. Maybe it's a cloud that I'm putting my fears and my worries in, and I'm just gently watching that going out to the horizon. Maybe it's a cable car of a train that I put all my thoughts in that are stressful and watch them go by. And guess what? Sometimes you're going to have to do that 100 times. Maybe you're like, there's that damn thought again. Chuck it away. There's that thought again. And again, some people write it on a mental dry erase board, and then they take the dry erase marker and wash it away. You might think of it as though it's a computer program or a computer file, and you take it and you put it down in the little trash basket and you get rid of it. And maybe you have to do that 140 times a day, and that's fine. But thoughts are not facts. I don't care how you spin it. Now, this is in every part of your life. I know what they're thinking. You don't. Well, if I could have done this, this is what my brain tells me. It's lying to you. They're not facts, they're thoughts. So instead of why am I thinking this? And what does this mean about me? It doesn't. You just go, I'm having this thought. I am having a thought. See, your issue is that you're identifying with this thought. This is me. What the hell does this say about me? No, you're just having a thought. Because that creates distance. So when you're creating distance from a thought, you're not saying it's not existing. That's not going to serve you. You never say something isn't existing. You allow yourself to see this distance. You allow yourself to develop the distance in between the two thoughts. When you acknowledge things from a neutral place, it becomes so much easier to distance from it. I call it the 42nd Street Broadway effect in Manhattan. So think about, I lived in Manhattan. Let's say you haven't, but you know what 42nd Street is. You know Broadway. That's where they dropped the ball, the New Year's Eve ball here in the States. And you watch it and there's lights and there's billboards and there's street performers and there's all these things. That's not New York. That is a short amount of blocks. But you can go down there and you can see all these big buildings and there's lights. And in your mind, you can go, damn, this is New York. It really isn't. If I take you to Chelsea Pier and I put you in a helicopter and we go 10,000 feet above the skyline, right? You're in the skyline. And you look down and you see all the lights. You're like, oh my God, that's Broadway. But you take a glance out. You're like, holy shit, there's a lot around me. Queens is over there. Brooklyn's over there. The Bronx are over here. Upstate, uptown, downtown. You can see things because you're pulling distance from it. You're not just sitting in downtown Baltimore. Good God. You're not in downtown Baltimore if you're in New York. You're not just sitting on Broadway. But if you're in it, it's hard not to be in it. And that's why you want to set distance in between the two. There's a mindful based practice. Once again, this really helped me. And I didn't think I could do it, because with a racing brain, sometimes you're like, well, that's fucking great. I can't sit there and visualize. You can. You're trying too hard. You want to sit with it. But mindful practices has been proven scientifically over and over again to be effective. Your issue is you're trying to get away from it versus sitting in the present space today. Because time is linear, by the way. Time does not exist tomorrow. Time does not exist when you started this podcast. That's done. Time's always in this moment in time. Okay. I mean, there's quantum physics and, ulterior, kind of like different, people who pass, and there's all of that. But at the end of the day, time still only exists right now. And that's where you can train your brain to label a thought as a passing thought. That's why something like a railway car, something like having your anchor place that I discussed, all of these things is to just pull back. And that's why I do the 5 journals. I copywritten the 5 journals, and that's where you have the 5 journal series. I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. Wait, it might be on my Patreon. Well, there is also the 5 journal series on my YouTube. I think if it's on Patreon, you get the whole thing, but go to the YouTube. Obviously, it's free. Go to the YouTube. Thank you for sounding like an old person. Go to YouTube and you can go under my playlist and you'll see the 5 journal series that'll help you. But having these journals separated versus putting all of your thoughts into one journal, though I'd rather you do that than no journals, it helps you dismantle it. For my brain and how my brain looks and feels, I have to really compartmentalize and structure things in order for me to process. Because if not, it's very overwhelming to me. I don't want to do it. And it seems like labor versus having it divided out. Okay, so your mindful based practice and visualization is such a key to so much. This is where you can get into manifestation and gratitude and all of these things being effective. Because your exposure response prevention is gradual exposure to distressing thoughts. And that's where I do like to write down your fear intrusive thoughts and looking at it from a neutral view. So that reduces your hyperactivity to the thought. So you know what? Let's do that. All right, this just jumped in my head. Look at your intrusive thoughts. Like put all your worries, all of your fears in Broadway. You're in New York City. If you've never been, you still know what it looks like. Dump them all. Put them right on in there. It's going to feel a lot. You're going to be encompassed by them. But then picture yourself getting in a helicopter or an airplane or bungee, whatever you're going to visualize. And visualize yourself getting lifted above this. You're not trying to make them go away. No. You're just getting some distance. And then just look at them. Are they facts? Nope. Your thoughts will never be facts. They're thoughts. They're never going to be facts, but they're thoughts. Okay, some things you think about, does it come to fruition? Maybe it doesn't. But the thoughts themselves are not facts. So if you can pull some distance from it, it will greatly help you through this process, right? You're not trying to fix it. You're just trying to observe it. So that's why the exposure helps a lot with that. Now, you're going to have to accept the uncertainty. Radical acceptance is another key to my to my practice, because it has helped me. Things are going to be what they are, whether you like them or not. I don't care how bad you try to change them. I don't care how much you want it to be different. It's not. So I would encourage you to go back to that podcast, because it's an entire podcast on radical acceptance. So I don't want to spend tons of time here, but it's accepting the uncertainty. Listen, uncertain things are going to happen. So if you're walking around trying to maneuver and trying to figure out, now you're playing scenarios, now you're screenwriting and you're saying what this person's thinking, or if you have a conversation with this person's going to say this, and then you're going to say this. What? No. Things are going to be uncertain. Hey, what if this doesn't work? Okay, what if it does? Well, then it does. Yeah, then it does. Right? The more you seek certainty is the stronger that negative response comes. Right? You're looking for something, and you're never going to find really what you're looking for, this reassurance. If somebody says, I love you, or they're demonstrating to you that they love you, not the way you want them to demonstrate it, but they really do, and they're 100% in, but you need certainty, so you need them to act a certain way. No, you don't get to do that. You can't keep moving the goalpost. If this happens, I'll be happy. Okay. If this happens, I'll be happy. Still not happy. Now you're constantly seeking this. It's the same thing with intrusive thoughts. Because what you're seeking is going to make the uncertainty be more fearful, and it's going to make it stronger. And that's where you'll do the thing like Google. Ugh, say that 100 times. Google 100 times. Or you'll seek something online, or a TikTok, or Instagram, or a video, or a podcast that confirms that you are crazy, confirms that you are right, confirms that this is a toxic relationship if this person doesn't do this. That is not always true. Sometimes toxicity is individualized. No, there's some basic foundations to toxicity, and when it comes to relationships and things like that, that's true. But it's going to be different. You know, one of the biggest things to take away from this entire podcast is you're not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You're really not your past either, right? If we're going into that kind of ventures a little bit out of a Puro, but not, kind of not really, because you could live on that and go, why did I do this? Why did I do this? You're beating yourself up. You're trying to restructure. Now you're in an obsessive loop about that. And I'm such a bad person. And, you know, all of these things come into your mind. And now suddenly you're making them truth. You are not your thoughts, and your feelings aren't facts either, by the way. Thoughts and feelings aren't facts. Thoughts and feelings are waves. Okay. Look at yourself standing in a beach. You're standing at the beach. You got your feet in the water. You know how the waves kind of come in and then it goes back out. There's a little bit of undertow to it. Then, yeah, there's also high tide, low tide. Okay. So look at those as more intrusive, less intrusive. And you just see them coming in. Your feelings are not facts. It's how you feel in the moment. And then once you can learn about your attachments, and you learn about your codependency, and you learn about your trauma bonds and your emotional labor, you learn about these things, guess what happens? Your feelings do start to change. Your thoughts do start to change. Listen, shit's going to be hard in the beginning, because that means that you have to detach and let go of the identity that you put on the control and the need to understand things. Believe it or not, that becomes part of your identity. So as you get more and more accepting of the things in which you're doing, guess what? Then you have to detach from that being your identity. So that's the wrap on Puro. I've lived with it since I was a small child. Didn't know what the hell it was. I just work with it. I really use my anchor place, and I use the visualization of looking at my thought. I also put it in my negative journal, one of the 5 journals, and I look at it, and I'm not putting a feeling there. I'm looking at it as words. And I also like to repeat words. So let's say hammer, 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 hammer. Sometimes I will write that down on 2 or 3 pages like you would do in school if you were learning spelling, because you say the word hammer, it takes away the connection to it. It's just a word. They're just letters. They're just letters that form a word that who the hell created that, right? Like who's sitting around and they go, you know what? And think about how lazy they are. Okay, they were naming fruit. They were doing the things. Oh, banana, apple. Then they got to orange and they just got lazy as hell. Orange. I'm just going to name it an orange. But then what causes orange to be orange? Like, you know, you think about that. What caused people to come up with things and to learn things? That's the beautiful part of the brain, is you don't have to know where it starts. You don't have to accept it the way it, I think orange is orange. I mean, there's certain things that are factual, but you don't need to know everything. They're fun passing thoughts though. Really think about it. Who the hell created this? And then think of different languages. Why? I cannot speak Chinese. I could learn it, I guess. It seems hard, but I could learn it. Why do they speak Chinese? Why do I speak English? I mean, there's a lot. And I know if you go, it was also a survival thing and how people communicated during war. Like I know that, but I'm just saying it's just bizarre. It's cool. So just look at your thoughts as thoughts. You're not crazy. Seal says we're all a little crazy. You might have a point there, but you're not bad because you're having these thoughts. You're not wrong because they are intrusive. Remember, you are not your thoughts. Stop attaching it like thinking about it is just as bad as doing it. It's not. So let's not obsess on it. Let's not freak out. But if you are on Patreon, do take that worksheet kind of analyzation there and save that in case you find that it is heightened, and then we can work accordingly around that. But guys, you're okay. Listen, It's crazy to be a human being. It's crazy how the brain works. Why are some people wired different? I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. You don't need to know. So let's not obsess on it. Remember that you are good. You're not your thoughts, and they are not facts.